Everyone, welcome back to Manufacturing Hub. We took a brief week and a couple of days off because Vlad was on vacation. You might see he looks tanner. He actually might be the tannest person on the show for the first time ever. So congratulations, Vlad. Well-deserved vacation. Maybe we will catch up at some later Manufacturing Hub time to go check out and hear your thoughts on vacation. If you guys are new here, welcome. If you guys have been here before, welcome back. If you're new here, we typically go live every Wednesday, but again, today is a special time, special event as we've got Ira coming on, who we will go ahead and introduce in just a moment. But we like to have a very fun conversational style show. If you guys have questions for Ira, if you guys have questions for Vlad or myself, please feel free to go ahead and drop them in the comments. We'll go ahead and do our very best to go bring those questions into the show as we go through the process of having those conversations. But without further ado, again, everyone officially welcome to Manufacturing Hub. This is episode 176. We'd like to officially welcome Ira Sharp to the show. Ira, thank you for being here.
Hey, great to be here, and welcome back, Vlad. Great to see you. And yeah, thanks for having me on. I think it's been, man, it's been over a year, I think, since the last time I was on this show. So it's fantastic to be here, and great to see that the show's still moving on and educating and providing wisdom to everybody that's out there. So thanks, you guys, running the show.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Ira. Thank you so much for taking the time. I think it's going to be a great conversation. We have a lot of, I want to say, industry slash technical slash also engineering and sort of human questions that we want to explore. That being said, Ira, for those who maybe have not listened to the previous conversation we had with you or maybe are unfamiliar with your background, could you give us a reintroduction, please?
Yeah. So thanks. Yeah. So my name is Ira Sharp, and my career is with a company called Phoenix Contact. And at Phoenix Contact, I'm the director of marketing for all of the automation products at Phoenix Contact in the U.S. market. And but long before that, so if you look at kind of like who I am, where I came from, and all these kinds of things. Um, I have about almost 20 years of experience in the industrial automation space. My first position was at Phoenix Contact, and I've been there since. Before that, I did a variety of different sales positions, basically or primarily at companies that you may remember if you're in the US, companies like Circuit City or Sears. I had nothing to do with either of them going out of business, but neither one of them exist anymore. But I was a sales associate there and sold different types of home audio video equipment. Went through engineering school. Through engineering school, we did a project, and I started out my own company directly out of school, where I brought to market, tried to bring to market a digital price tag, and that was many moons ago, about 20 years ago. You can see some things like this in the market today if you were on a Kohl's department store or these kind of things where they have like the little display tags. That was some of the stuff that I had worked on and developed 20 years ago. And since then, I landed at this company, Phoenix Contact. And Phoenix Contact has been a fantastic run. I've worn many hats there. Yes, I'm a director today, but when I first started, it was a lot of fun because I was a product specialist, and as a product specialist, I got the opportunity to look at technology and really blend my engineering background with sales and marketing background that I had previous, and travel around the country extensively and talk to a lot of customers about a lot of different kinds of applications. Originally, I was a wireless product specialist, focusing in on things like Wi-Fi and cellular and wireless HART and UHF radios and on and on and on, Bluetooth technology. And being working for a company like Phoenix, there are so many industries. One day I would be in a process automation facility trying to get wireless to work, 900 megahertz, 20 miles. And then the next day be in an automotive facility in Detroit, Michigan, trying to get Bluetooth to work between two machine cells. It was a wild ride. Worked out well. Had different marketing management positions, and then made my way in to be a director, leading the entire automation business here in the U.S. market. So maybe that's the medium version of who Ira is and where I am. Hopefully, it gives you a good lay of the land. And any questions, I'm happy to answer.
I do have a couple of questions on that side, Ira. Let me ask you, maybe with starting with myself, right? When I was studying electrical engineering, I almost knew that I wanted to make circuit boards. I wanted to program circuits. I personally did not know that it was even possible or is an opportunity to be in sales and marketing as someone who's more technical. And of course, you read about leaders like Steve Jobs or, like the bigger founders who have a technical background who are excellent at product or sales. But maybe could you tell us a story about how you came to that realization or how those conversations kind of like came to be, and maybe how were those opportunities presented to you in a way that made you like decide to go into that route?
Yeah, so I can give you my story and then I can add some context because I said, really through college, I did sales, right? So I always enjoyed it. I did okay at it. So there was that nature of it. And when I say sales, working in a retail establishment, it's not like going knocking door to door or outside sales. People are
Mhm.
coming to me, but I could educate them on a product. I could inform them on what it was, and I could guide them down a path. And I will say that I typically took a more technical path, even in those sales processes there, because you'd come in and I'd tell you about a receiver and I'd tell you about the total hallmark distortion and the watts and how clean this amp was, and your eyes would glaze over. But that's okay. I would make it make sense, and by the end, and then we would send you home with a really good system. Um, so I did that before I was in engineering school, and then in engineering school, um, I studied electrical engineering. That's what I graduated with. And I said when I got out of school that I was going to be an embedded systems engineer. That means I was going to sit behind a desk and I was going to write code all day. And I didn't want to talk to anybody. But I also wanted to live in central Pennsylvania. And that's a little hard to do. There's certainly opportunities, there's possibilities, but it was a little hard to do with where I was. I was dating my then girlfriend, now wife, at the time, and we just didn't want to move. So I had to look around at the jobs that were available, and I really didn't want to do sales. So to your point, how can you get into it? I'm telling you all the things that I didn't want to do because I'd already done it. I wanted to dig in. I wanted to use my engineering skill. I wanted to use my craft. And then I ended up getting this job actually as a marketing assistant, which is it's a funnier story about how I got the job. That maybe we can talk about it offline sometime. But anyways, so marketing assistant, didn't have a laptop, didn't have a cell phone, had a desktop computer. Was they're really there to just help with more almost administrative tasks in the very very beginning. But that's where I think the two worlds kind of connected because I ended up getting a job at Phoenix Contact and I was able to connect the technical pieces of what the company offered with my sales background of selling home audio video equipment and saw how they really could connect together. And in our world, in my world, in what you guys talk to every day on this manufacturing hub, we talk to a lot of engineers, and engineers like to talk to engineers because we all geek out about stuff, right? So it really made it nice because I could look at things from the technical point of view and geek out on it, but also then apply some of the way we talk about different products and services, whatever else, to bring those things together. And so I always say that if you're in engineering school and you enjoy talking to people, or you've worked in some sort of retail establishment, you have some unique skills that maybe the guy that's getting the better grades or maybe is a slightly better engineer or whatever else through schooling doesn't have. You have these personality skills that can really help you and you can leverage in different ways. So being in sales or being in marketing, this is a perfect place because this world of industrial automation or industrial is littered with people that have business backgrounds. It's littered with people that have engineering backgrounds, but having the blend is a little bit of a uniqueness. And if you can leverage it, you can really stand out from the crowd. And sales and marketing is one of those key areas. You don't have to just be that used car salesman. You can really look at
Yeah.
applications and really apply systems, processes, things to help further the conversation. You can build immense amount of trust and credibility with that, and that's what I would encourage people to do.
I really like that breakdown, to be honest with you, and I think the unfortunate reality is that in industrial automation we don't always see salesmen as what they are, which is a lot of times very technical people who understand the product, who understand the industry. And at least earlier in your career, you think of them, again, as you said, used car salesmen. So engineers don't tend to look for those roles. And I think there's maybe not as much, I want to say, marketing done for those roles, but they are extremely technical. You need to understand the product because ultimately you're not trying to just, how to say it, sell something that is unnecessary to someone who doesn't want it. You really need to understand their needs. You really need to understand the process. You're usually placed in a vertical. You have to understand a very specific product line, right? And you could probably paint us an even better picture than I can. But ultimately, I think those roles are not at all what you would see in, door-to-door sales and maybe what you have done in early career. And even though like that builds those skills, I think industrial automation is a very specific set of requirements for engineers. But like I said, I would be the first one to admit early in my career, I didn't know what it truly looked like. And I think I would have certainly explored them more, maybe given the opportunity to have that knowledge. So maybe curious on that side, Ira, what do the early, or I guess beginning sales engineers or marketing engineers roles look like? If someone was maybe exploring a career at Phoenix Contact or maybe any other companies or competitors, obviously without going into the specific names, what do those careers maybe look like for someone who's just starting out? If it's rotational programs, if it's jumping right in, what do they need to learn? Maybe what kind of challenges would you see them face, etc.
Yeah, so that's a really good question. And honestly, I don't know how much I can speak to other manufacturers or other areas, but I can certainly speak to Phoenix Contact. And Phoenix Contact has an excellent, and this isn't just a shill. This actually was not planned, but um, they have an excellent apprenticeship program. And what that means is, by the way, I did not make it into the apprenticeship program. I started 3 months before the apprenticeship program officially started at Phoenix Contact. So I helped train the first crop of apprentices, and some of them are very successful sales managers and other people in the organization today. But I always point that out because I didn't get to experience what I'm going to tell you is so great about what this Phoenix Contact program is. So Phoenix Contact has this apprenticeship program, and it's a great intro and kind of what you said, Vlad, because look, and I didn't explore this a whole lot. We can always go back and dig in, but I started it here almost 20 years, 19 years ago. I was very young, 23, I think, and I looked very young. So not only am I a sales guy, I look like I'm 10, right? And I'm coming in to talk to you, and you've been in the industry for 15 years about how you can improve your processes. You're looking at me like, how are you gonna help, right? So I saw this 100% not as a sales game, but as a credibility game. How can I
Mhm.
give you some sort of confidence in me that I can help you in this sliver of what you do? Because clearly you have way more knowledge than everything else, right? So this apprenticeship program, I think, does this in a good way. What it does is, first of all, it's an 18-month program. We hire people directly out of college. It's your first job, and we give you 18 months to work in every department in Phoenix Contact. So you work in customer service, you work in technical service, you work in the warehouse loading boxes and shipping them out the door. You work in marketing, you do sales rotations. You work in our distribution department to learn how it is to work with distributor partners and how these relationships work. You work with one of our distributors to figure out what that side of the fence looks like. You get to work in all these different areas. It's a huge investment the company makes in the personnel because honestly, as the person going through it, you're not adding a whole lot of benefit to the company at that moment in time. But that's not what
Mhm.
it's for. It's to build your confidence, it's to build your own credibility, it's to build your own skill set. So when we do place you in a position, which is typically sales with a backstop of marketing and then other positions at Phoenix Contact, you're that much more prepared. So it gives you those relationships internal, the confidence in the technology, the products, the industries, and everything else to help work you through that. So it is really a good program, and it's called the apprenticeship, and we have several hires of those every year.
Let me ask you one last question before I pass it on to Dave on that topic, right? Do you guys typically hire across different backgrounds for that type of a program? Would you have, for example, someone maybe with a business background who would be then brought up to speed with the tech, or is it purely aimed at, technical people to be brought on to up to speed on the sales and marketing side? And maybe there's even other degrees that are maybe interesting for people to pursue, right? I'm curious what your perspective is on backgrounds.
Yeah, so in my years of dealing with the program, and I used to be heavily involved in more of the hiring side, not the recruiting side, but and I'm little less involved today. Definitely on the training side, we're as a team we're still involved, but I would say we get a pretty diverse group of backgrounds. The majority are technical, so some sort of engineer, some engineer, and then we
Mhm.
teach the sales and the other skills. Although we have done it the other way around, and it has been successful. Um, I I am a firm believer in that the technical knack is just something you can have. Like you don't have to be the engineer. You need to probably be an engineer to be able to get through some of the engineering concepts to design this stuff, but to get excited about technology, to get excited about automation, to get excited about control cabinets, because I know they're exciting. If you're weird like us, right? They're exciting.
It's
For everybody else, it's a gray box in the corner that collects dust, right? But it's if you can get excited about that and you can convey why that is, then you're hitting the marks. And it's typically easier if you have a more technical inclination, engineering degree or business, and you just did programming on the side or whatever it is. So
Mhm. Absolutely. No, so I think the apprenticeship programs are, there are other organizations who call them more like co-ops. I think that they are fantastic, and for me, it's one of those things that I wish I knew existed coming out of college because I feel like that would have been a great opportunity. Kind of, I would say a lot of kind of experienced folks in the industry would say that most people take 6 to 18 months in order to actually understand what's happening. So it gives you the opportunity in as exciting places as most people can have going and rotating to different positions to get a better understanding of what's going on in the industry, as well as going and doing some learning to see where you're going to fit. So you just don't sit in an office for 18 months, or you just don't sit in one place for 18 months trying to go figure something out. So I think the apprenticeships are very exciting. Let me ask Ira, on the apprenticeship side, did it start as a US initiative? Did it start because Phoenix is a German company and they have apprenticeships there and the concept came over to the US almost 20 years ago? Do you have a bit more insight into kind of how it started?
yeah, I mean it started because we needed employees and it was hard to find skilled
Hmm.
people because unemployment was low. I mean, I'm sure there's more nuances that went into it, but I know that was a big bullet in the list of things that were happening. So it was hard to find
Hmm.
people. So rather than finding people, one of the things you can do is grow people. It was not a European initiative, definitely
Okay.
influence in some
Hmm.
capacity, but it was a U.S. born initiative. And yeah, that's really what it was born out of. Now I will say that over the years, the ups and the downs, it's always continued on. So
Okay.
we've always seen it as a funnel to bring in new people. Most of those people stay. Some people move
Hmm.
on. If you're not familiar with Phoenix Contact, it is a bit. You guys have worked with Phoenix Contact, not just
Hmm.
me, but other people as well. It is a bit of an interesting company because it does hold on to people for a very long time.
Yes.
It's definitely a different kind of place to work.
Hmm.
It feels more like a family and these kind of things. I
Hmm.
know a lot of people say that. There's a lot of people that have been there for a long time. I've been there 19 years, and it's not
Hmm.
uncommon to find people there with 10, 15, 20, 25 years of experience. So,
Absolutely. I will say Zach Stank, who's been on the show a number of times and has certainly appeared in a bunch of the stuff that we've seen. And Vlad and I see it like a lot of the major trade shows. I think Zach has been there 10 or 15 years. He's been there a long time. And I would agree. I feel like I don't know very many people from Phoenix who have been there for, less than 5 years, or maybe less than 10 years. And you see lots of familiar places moving into different positions and different opportunities, which for me is always good, right? You want those organizations that will continue to grow their people and provide them with opportunities to stay within the organization. I think especially in our industry, it's really easy to go see lots of people change companies, but those companies lose lots of knowledge, especially on the technical side,
Hmm.
which is somewhere between hard and impossible to go regain, because you have to grow someone for another, 5 to 10 years before you get to that point.
It is a sliding scale, but yes, it is there. Hard to impossible.
Absolutely. Let me ask Ira. Most people who are technical people, most engineers, don't think about sales and marketing, right? They kind of, as we were talking before, they think of sales guys. And every time you think of a salesperson, no offense to Steven in the comments, you think of the kind of the sleazy used car salesman. Whereas in my experience, most of the technical folks who are going and doing, B2B sales are more on the technical side, and it's features and functions, and can we go solve this problem, and then maybe we go figure out the money thing on the back end, because money has to change hands for most of these solutions. Is there kind of like a hump that people have to get over to think about the sales side, or to think about how can I communicate these technical concepts on the marketing side, that you see kind of mind shifts that have to change? Or do you see it mostly as there are certain people drawn towards engineering or the technical side, and there are certain people drawn towards talking to people, be it on the sales or marketing side, and the small part of the Venn diagram that overlaps are the people who are really good in some of these customer facing positions?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think there are people that they just don't want to necessarily have these conversations. They don't want to be out there. They want to dig in and they want to do the engineering, and that's needed. So awesome. And then there are people that would prefer to be forward facing all the time, and those two polar, I think, areas self sort themselves
Mhm.
and the types of professions they go into. It's that middle area that I would say, hey, if you're a technical person going through engineering school or a technical
Mhm.
school or whatever else, and you have any inclination towards sales, and sales, like I said, can be it's an interesting word because, like you mentioned, in a lot of cases, I think particularly in the B2B space, well, maybe not so much in the B2B space, but people think of sales and they think of it being a persuasion type of thing. In a lot of cases,
Mhm.
it's not, especially in our world, because it's more of assisting. Because if you cannot provide value, then it's not worth the time. The person that you're trying to call on won't want to see you. You need to be able to provide value to the person that you're calling on. That requires skill. Do you need to be an expert in everything? This is something that I talk with the apprentices and other people about a lot all the time, the imposter syndrome, right? How am I going to be able to help somebody that's been in the industry for 20 years? The one thing that I say is, nah, I get it. So and so has been in the industry for 20 years and they're going to know automotive manufacturing inside and out better than you ever will. You're not going there to talk to them about automotive manufacturing. You're going there to talk to them about power reliability and how maybe dirty power can lead to downtime in systems. And the way to do that, the way to circumvent that is to monitor and clean up power by using these types of pieces. And this is an example of how that's done and technically the way it happens. That person likely does not have the depth in that particular niche area that you do. So you are the subject matter expert in this area, not the whole zone. And by the way,
Mhm.
be inquisitive and want to be educated on the whole area because that's the relationship piece, which is also part of sales, right? So you can get the bigger picture so you can expand your scope as a person to be able to carry
Mhm.
those experiences on forward, but you can still impart your knowledge on this particular narrow area so that you can provide them more knowledge in their area. So to answer your question, is I think there's the self-sorting on the both sides of that. It's that middle area where I would say if you're a technical person, don't shy away from the sales piece of it. It's something to embrace, and I think it can only enhance you. You can always fall back more to the technical side if you find that it's not for you. And you can do it the other way around as well. Although I will say that a lot of people that go to the technical side In a lot of cases, they're drawn there because they want to be less and less involved with the forward
Hmm.
facing stuff, and it's harder to kind of pull yourself out if you've gone too far into the. I'm not saying it doesn't happen. I'm just saying typically it's easier to go the other way than the opposite.
Absolutely. I'm going to make one comment towards what you were saying, Ira, and let Vlad go ask the questions that I can see he's chomping at the bit to ask. But I would agree with your comments, Ira, especially about younger sales folks. But I would say not just kind of particularly the younger technical salespeople. I think kind of the best advice that you can give anyone in this type of sales, especially early on, is not to go make stuff up. I feel like there's lots like the concept is if I don't know the answer, let me just go make up an answer. And it only backfires when you're working with technical people, especially the first time you go through it. They very well may ask you questions that they already know just to see if you're going to be honest with them. And so the best advice that I have gotten is if you don't know the answer to the question, go tell them you don't know the answer to the question, tell them you're going to go look it up and actually go figure out the answer to the question and get back with them. That's absolutely going to help the process of building that trust because they know that they can go through the process of trusting you. There's no better way to lose all of your credibility than to just make something up on the spot, and if it's wrong, you probably should just go find another customer to talk to because these guys are never going to do business with you.
Yeah, yeah. So I know Vlad wants to ask his question. I want to make him wait another minute because I want to see him squirm. But because I want to add on one thing there. You said a really important thing that I mentioned it as well. The
Mhm.
confidence and the trust piece.
Yep.
You're not selling products. You're not. You're selling the solution to someone's problem, and you're doing that through building the trust and the confidence. And exactly like you said, if you don't know the answer, just say you don't know the answer. Get back with them. That's a
Mhm.
huge trust building exercise. Like it's okay. And I know I did focus in on the younger crowd, right? People
Yep.
coming out of school, getting in. It does not have to be there. I have worked with many engineers that have been in industry for a long time, and particularly if you have specialty skill sets.
Mhm.
I've helped people get jobs at Phoenix and in other companies. I'm a water engineer and I've done water for 25 years, and
Mhm.
I'm tired of doing water. I'd like to try something different. Sales can be a great opportunity because
Mhm.
the depth and the knowledge that you have in your particular area is huge, and you're
Yes.
going to know more than many other people, and you can help forward and backward. And what I mean by that is you can help other customers that are potentially water people and how they can improve their systems by using this set of solutions, but then also
Mhm.
backward, looking towards the marketing team, looking towards the development team. Hey, if we only had a product that did X, Y, and Z, they're getting rid of auto dialers because they went out in the 80s, and now we're going cellular, and UHF is too hard to do, blah blah blah. There are things that can be said that you have intellectual property on only because of your time invested in that industry,
Mhm.
in that technology, in that application, that you can't read in a book. It's stuff that you've learned over time. Sometimes you're right, sometimes you're wrong, but it's good solid information if you've lived it, and most likely if you've lived it, other people are kind of having the same challenges as well, and that can really help drive development, marketing, and positioning overall.
I really like, I guess, that thought, Ira, because I do want to follow up with and my question was very relevant to what you said. And is it as easy, I guess, to make the jump from a technical position maybe into sales as you've described, or is there something that engineers can do to maybe better prep themselves, right? Are there programs if they're obviously not able to get into like a rotational program, or maybe they're already mid-career, in order to prepare themselves for something that's going to be more on the sales or marketing side? Or is there maybe a way to get a mentor on that side? Like maybe what does that look like ideally in your mind for someone who's like, hey, like I am a little bit curious and maybe not just on a whim applying, but looking to prepare themselves on, on setting themselves into a position to succeed, so to speak, in those roles. What does that look like?
Yeah, I mean, I think anytime you're doing anything new, it's good to have some mentor or somebody to be able to talk to, just to, if anything else, vent. Maybe just make sure you're on the right path. maybe
Mhm.
act as a sounding board, because in your own head, maybe you guys are different, but when things I'm doing or whatever else, you say, oh man, I can't believe I just said that thing on this podcast, and you're ruminating on it over and over and over. And meanwhile, the people that are on the podcast going, we didn't even notice it. Like, you can blow it out of
Mhm.
proportion much bigger than it probably should. And if you are
Mhm.
someone that has been doing the engineering for a long time, you may be wondering those exact things. What am I going to say to this guy? How am I going to, prove my worth? Whatever else. Just being you is probably going to be enough. 90, well, no, it should always be enough, period. But it will be enough, and really finding how you could add value. And if you can't add value, then you're not going to sell anything. Like, that's really what it comes down to. You just need to have the conversation to figure out how you can apply and how you can sell. So to answer your question, I think anytime, it doesn't have to be someone that is an expert salesperson. It doesn't have to be someone just someone that's open-minded, if not in the particular position, to be able to be a sounding board, I think is a good place to go. But I think it is definitely possible and even probable that if you wanted to parlay past experience. Another
Mhm.
example is, I had a gentleman contact me. It was about a year and a half ago, and he's like, "Hey, he was actually in the automotive industry for like 25 years, and he had been doing data analytics, and he at a major automotive company, and he was just tired of it, tired of dealing with the union and just all the stuff that was going on there. Just was. So but he didn't know where he could apply his skill set, because it was in automotive and it was in data, and
Mhm.
he's like, I don't know what to do with this. I know industrial controls. Like, how can I find someone that needs that skill set? And I
Mhm.
was like, have you met Amazon? Like, they're trying to get into exactly this industry, and that's where he ended up going to work. I mean, and there are different companies all over the place that, if you really take a step back and look at what your skill set is and what you do or what you did, there's probably somebody else that needs that in an augmented way. And if you're willing to say what you mentioned is, I can't remember the exact words you use, but if you're in this space and you have interest or desire or an itch or whatever it is to take it on, as long as you're not doing it on a whim, and you do it in a calculated way, you're not just like, I had a bad day today, I'm going to go be a sales guy. No, don't do that. But like, you've given it some thought, and you're like, yes, I definitely want to go make this jump. I think it's a perfect opportunity to dip your toe in the water and see if you see it through.
Absolutely. And I would say and maybe argue that I think those skills are also not only important when it comes to maybe a position, but also for engineers to learn in order to better sell themselves for better projects,
Oh yeah.
better, promotions or within a company. So I think, within maybe the context of this conversation, we've been talking about roles within sales, but I think it's just as important to understand maybe the communication piece in order to be able to, like I said, get into the role that you want at your current company, right? It doesn't have to be making a complete jump, but it could be just better communicating to your boss in order to navigate maybe, like I said, a promotion or maybe a move, whatever that looks like. So I think it's very important skills to have.
Yeah, communications is absolute paramount. Anything that you do, the better communicator you are, the
Mhm.
better you will be seen, the better work you'll get done from everybody around you, and it just eases anxiety all the way around. I can't tell you. I mean, we've all been on those emails where you're just like, I can't believe that person said that, and they didn't mean it at all, you know. And it's just sometimes the tone, dialect, whatever it may be, gets misinterpreted. Communications is key.
Many Yes, many of those email stories. But I do want to move us along because we have a very important topic to discuss, which has been part of, I guess, our circles for a very long time, Industry 4.0. I think that there's certainly been a lot of changes in, I guess, in end user manufacturing, but also maybe over the last couple of years. Ira, you've been involved in a couple of groups that have those discussions. So have Dave and I. But maybe if we can start with an easy question, how do you maybe define Industry 4.0 when it comes to maybe the OEM perspective, but maybe also the end user perspective a little bit?
Yeah. So, um, just as a quick check, then. So I didn't say this in the beginning, but you mentioned it, Vlad. I have, of course, I'm a director at Phoenix Contact and Industrial Automation. But in addition to that, I'm a founding member of the Industry 4.0 Club. I sit on the board of IoT World. I actually started my own podcast that focuses on IoT, Industry 4.0, and really the future of technology, and very active on LinkedIn talking about these topics. So these are the circles that you're speaking about. Definitely both inside of Phoenix and outside of Phoenix, enjoy talking about this topic. I really do
Mhm.
think it's the future of manufacturing, and yeah, I do think it is changed quite a bit. And just to define it, um, you know, Industry 4.0, I think the topic has changed over the year. Well, I don't think it definitely has changed over the years in its meaning. It started off as really a European centric approach to how things would be done in the future of manufacturing, really relating to a lot of more or less like digital twins and these kind of things. Now it's used, I think, I would say, not think, I would say that it is used interchangeably with the idea of IoT,
Mhm.
and really just the idea of um, data and in manufacturing. And I would say, I would extend that because that's very generic, and say that it's really the idea of collecting data to create information to make meaningful change in operation. That's the way that I would define where we are now. You can there will definitely be people that will debate that. I'm sure I'm wrong, and I'm sure there's many other different definitions, and that's okay. The important thing is that there is more information being collected today than there was yesterday. There is a
Mhm.
hierarchical nature to it, so it can be used to make it information. That's the piece. That's the main piece. Data to information. Information
Mhm.
can be used. Data is just data. Information then can be used to make impact on machines, systems, and processes. Um, how it's done, how it flows in other systems, how it's expanded or contracted over the years, that can all be discussed in a bigger way. But that would be my generic definition of the topic.
Let me ask you, I guess, one more question before I pass it on to Dave, but also I think a very important one, which is, not to ask you about just the opportunities of Industry 4.0, because I hope that everyone understands that having data to be able to make better business decisions is an opportunity. But what are the challenges that you see in today's manufacturing landscape when it comes to that, right? And is that on the hardware side, on the software side? Is it on the stack that we seem to have created over the decades? Is it more on the data processing, analysis, collecting? What are your thoughts on the challenges when it comes to Industry 4.0?
There's no challenges. Everything's perfect. You just open up a box, you turn it on, it works. Now I'm kidding. I'm kidding. I'm kidding. It's not the case. I wish that was the case. Um, I don't think the challenges are software related. I don't think the challenges are hardware related at all.
Mhm.
The hardware's there, the software's there. There's too many different ways to do things,
Mhm.
and really the selection isn't really the issue either. To answer your question, I think the issue is it's the philosophical change, because if you're going to implement something and you really want it to take effect, it can't be a fly by night operation. Like, it really needs to be integrated into a company, and how the company will operate with this
Mhm.
newfound tool, this newfound data set. um, you may be producing widgets, but if you're going to make data, you're going to use data, Industry 4.0 or IoT, to improve your operations, you really need to make that the center. You will still produce widgets, so it doesn't mean you're selling off your data or anything like that when I say to make it the center. But by making data the center, you will become better at producing the widgets. You will do so in a more effective and efficient way. You will maybe be able to meet different sustainability goals and all these other things that come along with it. You'll be able to execute on AI strategies that other companies won't be able to execute on. Maybe that's not today, by the way. Maybe that's 2 to 3 years from now. But you'll be better positioned tomorrow by the effort that you put in today. The big challenge that I see for most companies today is, number one, that philosophical change is hard because
Mhm.
most companies that are able to implement this are already successful. So why change if you're successful? And then number two, it's a lot of cases there is a cost with not an immediate return. Now, you can
Mhm.
do projects and you should do projects that do have quick returns so you can prove organizationally that it does have impact. But in a lot of cases, the scope is usually very big in the start and it's hard to meet the objectives. So it's
Mhm.
important to really have these small wins and focus on a problem to solve and actually have a problem to solve to show success so that you can have this bigger change. And you need buy-in. You need buy-in. Otherwise, you have people that are trying to poison it along the way.
I really like that coverage. I think that is a very thorough explanation. I could not have said it
Mhm.
better myself. I really appreciate that, Ira. I think that's Really good. Dave, what
No,
are your thoughts?
I agree. I think Ira said it in such an elegant way that we might not ever be able to talk about Industry 4.0 on the show again, Vlad. But no, I would agree with your concepts, Ira. I think that there is the heart. I think that we have solved the technical problem of Industry 4.0. If someone wanted to go buy Industry 4.0 and they had enough money and roadmap and timeline, someone could go buy the technology, software, hardware to go have Industry 4.0. It is the human aspects, and not just the human aspects of we have to go use the technology, but it's the cultural change kind of from top down of, hey, we need to go look at all of this information and make meaningful changes. In the conversations you're having, in the customers that you're seeing, are you seeing more of that change from the top in the last couple of years as you have in, I don't know, the 10 years, the first 10 years of Industry 4.0 as a concept?
Yes, for sure. It is happening more and more. Now, are people successful? It's becoming more successful. And I say it because
Hmm.
look, there are a lot of projects that I've seen that that I've tried to coach out of the particular direction they were going, and it just doesn't work out. But
Yep.
yes, there is definitely, I would say, a groundswell of people that are executing on this more and more. And I actually deal a lot with OEMs, so people that
Hmm.
are not the end user. So that's the other thing too. Is that over the years, I definitely had heard and witnessed this in more of a passing way, end users executing on this, and that is in my opinion, a little
Hmm.
bit easier because you have more of a confined space. And I say confined space, it
Hmm.
might be 15 facilities around the world, but still it's a
Hmm.
defined structure, asset
Yes.
structure, where if an OEM, you might be selling 120, 50, 1,000 machines across the world in many facilities with all different types of
Hmm.
systems you're dealing with. It's a little bit more dynamic and challenging. Well, I shouldn't say it's more challenging. It's different and poses different challenges. But yes, there has definitely been an uptick in people trying to execute on IoT and Industry 4.0 strategies, and it's a welcome sight. Uh, as far as the reasons why, it's not just buzz. In fact, if you look at one of the reports that I do look at fairly regularly is the IoT Analytics CEO report. I like to comment on this on LinkedIn, provide my input on it. But I like it because it's not someone's just general analysis of what's going on in the market. It's just looking at financial reports and quarterly updates and providing the keywords and how often they're used. So it's basically what people are
Hmm.
talking about, which I
Yep.
enjoy. And one of the big things that you see people talking about, well, not one of the major topic that you see people talking about is AI and ML and LLMs and
Hmm.
ChatGPT and all these kinds of things. And that's great. It's wonderful. But to make those things work, you need data. To get data,
Hmm.
you need to be able to go back to what we talked about a while ago, which is having this information, the data, raw data. And that's where I
Hmm.
said you might not necessarily see something tomorrow, but by setting yourself up today, you'll be better tomorrow as these model systems, whatever, improve. There's a lot of conversation we could have on AI. We could potentially get into that today. But the idea of having this data set to be able to apply to that is huge. There's lots of people that have and definitely had sustainability on their major CEO reports. Okay, that's a
Hmm.
great goal. But if you just take sustainability and say, I want to check this off because I'm Nike and I just want to look better as a company, nothing
Hmm.
against Nike, I'm just picked a name. You can do that. But the problem is the program will die. The program will die
Hmm.
because it is not tied to business goals. You tie it to
Hmm.
business goals by getting data, monitoring that data, creating some sort of overarching goal across the organization that we will achieve these metrics by looking at these data points and lowering these elements through the data you've collected and show that improvement over time. And you can tie that to profitability and revenues, which then ties to the shareholders. You get that circle, and then you have a successful program. It's these are the kinds of things that need to pull together to really move this type of thing forward.
Absolutely. Let me ask you about one of those words, or maybe six of those words that you just threw out, talking about AI. I feel like much, or at least some of the conversation around Industry 4.0, maybe the swell of that word appearing over and over again has died down, and we see lots more talking about AI or ML or LLMs or any of those other acronyms. Do you see artificial intelligence taking away from some of the focus of Industry 4.0? Do you see it as additive to Industry 4.0? Where you stand, and again, super early on in the world's use of actual artificial intelligence, and maybe very little of it on the manufacturing floor currently. What are you seeing? What are you predicting?
Yeah. So great question. So you're just going to get me in trouble wherever this is being broadcast. So thank you very much. I appreciate it.
You're welcome.
But I will
That's
speak
what
my
we're here
mind
for,
anyways.
Ira.
I will speak my mind anyways, and I'll hope for the best. Um, no, I definitely think if you look at the overall use of words, AI, the topic of AI, and whatever variation you are, is outpacing the idea of Industry 4.0 and IoT. I don't think there's any denying that. Now, the thing is, I think there are a lot of people that are saying those things and not necessarily looking at the back end and how you can actually accomplish them, because the foundation
Yes.
of these systems is, if you believe what I mentioned as kind of the foundation, or how I described Industry 4.0 and IoT, of the data and making this available, and that's the foundation of what you need for AI. Like, yes, you can do generic AI. Yes, you could use ChatGPT and you could change things. It will also not be personalized at all. So you have no competitive edge over anybody else that's using the platform, period. So how do you give yourself a competitive edge? You train the model with your information. You train a unique model with your information. And that's if you're using an LLM. But whether you're using machine learning or any other variation of AI, you need to provide context and information based on your data set. That's what makes it unique and gives you your unique value proposition in the market. Otherwise, you're just like everybody else. So by collecting that data early, it gives you a big leg up in being able to use that data tomorrow. I am really curious to see, you talk about predictions of all the industries that I've dealt with. The one industry that comes to mind that seems to have just this wealth of data, that I don't know that they fully put to use yet. Pretty sure they haven't, outside of maybe one company, um, is automotive. Like, anytime I've
Mhm.
talked to the automotive guys, they've been seriously talking about having and collecting data for a very long time now. Is it in the right context? Does it have the right the right pieces behind it to actually make it usable data? I don't know. Right, that depends on the organization and how they've structured things. But from a data perspective, they have it. Tesla is a company that has collected data for a while and has put it to
Mhm.
use and has been very successful in that. And you can look at it from a manufacturing perspective, but then just I always like to look at their cars. And I just think that it's one of the most fascinating things to me, because it is a machine, and it is a machine that it has to have the highest safety levels, because it takes care of the most precious cargo, you and your family, as it drives around. And at this point, you're trusting that control system to drive without you even paying attention, through autonomous driving, in a world where all kinds of variables are happening, because it's not a controlled environment, with dogs running out and people crossing the street and other people running red lights. Yet that all happens. And all that can happen wirelessly and get updates in your garage overnight to fix bugs in the control system. And we trust that. So if that's what the holy grail looks like for a control system, for a car that's carrying the most safe cargo that you can possibly think of, why can't we apply that to an industrial control system? I don't know. There's a lot of reasons, and I get it. Not everything's the same. The safety level of a car with your family is extremely important. That's a little different than a refinery. That if
Mhm.
something happens there, there's a lot bigger explosion. But still, the point is that it is possible. And if you look towards the future, these are the kind of things that could be happening, and the amount of data and information that's provided from that system is immense. That's where I really see applying this IoT Industry 4.0 to the AI type of narrative and how they can blend together.
Absolutely. I would say that I'm having conversations with different groups who are suddenly interested about AI, who have maybe used ChatGPT, or executives have used this and say, hey, this is interesting, but we haven't done all that groundwork. For me, I think it's interesting of, can we get some of these organizations excited to spend the time and the money to collect that data in order to go leverage it for some of these other tools? So I think that is interesting, and I am personally hopeful that it brings other people and other organizations to the, hey, we need to collect this data so that we can use it for these 5 reasons or these 20 reasons. And I think that is interesting, and it will be interesting to see if we can get other different people excited about things that most of us have been talking about for years and years and years, with other consumer technology. And I think that the parallel between consumer technologies and enterprise technologies, I guess I am hopeful that we'll see more parallels so that we can continue down this path. But I do want to let Vlad go ahead and throw his 2 cents in. He might not be quite as excited about artificial intelligence as I am.
I think for me, it's less about, excitement. It's more about understanding also where you stand, right? And I think that maybe the Tesla comparison is good, but I also realize that many manufacturers, at least with whom I work with, are not
And they're not
there
there.
yet, right?
Yeah, they're not there. Yep.
Exactly. So I think, like we discussed a bit earlier, I think they certainly can get there and the tech is there, but you need to get the proverbial plumbing in place before you can get contextualized data in a place where it can be used to make those decisions, right? And I think that in certain scenarios companies don't have that realization. They get excited about potential applications before they can even get there, right? And there's a couple of sayings, but I think in engineering is measure twice, cut once, right? And the way that applies to data is you need to get the right, I guess, things into place before you can make those decisions. And I simply think like many manufacturers, again, that I talk to are, how to say it, have not gone through those steps. I don't know, I guess, like what you, Ira, or they see on that side, but I think excitement is often tempered by the amount of investment that needs to go in to get that in place.
Yeah, and this is why I agree, and I've used the Tesla example a number of times, and the response that you have, I think, is 100% fitting, because it is the okay. If you're, I mean, a Tesla's hard to catch up to, but if you're Frito Lay, your General Mills, your Procter and Gamble, you're this behemoth of a company. Okay, maybe you have the capital to invest to get you to go in that directions, but the country, in the US at least, is made up of majority of small to mid-sized manufacturers, right? How do they stay
Mhm.
competitive? How do they catch up? How do they do these kinds of
Yeah.
things? It is actually, I would say, number one, a concern, because I do think they do need to get started and do need to get the ball rolling, or they will be left behind. I firmly believe that. So they need to start collecting and utilizing data in some capacity. This is where you got to make sure that it really comes down to the philosophy and becomes part of the way that you're going to operate it organizationally. I'm going to use data, and I'm going to make data the center of my business, and this is where I'm going to focus first. Then let's make that happen. Let's try to accomplish that goal, and move that ball forward. There are other organizations out there that are helping along the way. Organizations like SESME, for example, that's actually
Mhm.
focused on the small to mid-sized manufacturer, and they know that not everybody is going to be able to invest the time, money, efforts, research, these kind of things to help model some of these things that other larger companies can, so they can help along the way. Does it fit every industry? No. Does it fit every application? No. But there are programs out there like that. That one largely focuses a lot on like the power monitoring and these kinds of things. It's
Mhm.
help funded by the Department of Energy for obvious reasons there, but I think it's a good place to start. Power is a great place to start. It's one of the applications I hear about the most common, because it is easy to measure and it does have direct causality. You know, you can monitor energy, great, so it can turn things off and on more, and I can show that I've used less energy, saves me money. I can also be more sustainable because I use less energy and I created less fossil fuels. I can be more productive because now I can see the strain on my motor, so now I can be more preventative in my maintenance versus just going around and just doing things, or sorry, more predictive for my maintenance rather than just doing things in a preventative way. I can use that data to figure out, oh, when this happens, I get better yield, or or less yield. I'm getting smarter and smarter about my operations by simply
Mhm.
monitoring power. It's just a matter of how far out do you peel that onion. It doesn't have to be Tesla updating firmware in a garage of precious cargo of your family. It can be how is my motor running on this machine? Are the bearings okay? And can I make any tweaks to improve operations?
And I think that's an excellent example, Ira. If I can add on to that, I think it also builds, the skill set of your engineers who, in some instances, are not maybe controls or technically as inclined, right? They're probably more, like more mechanical, more electrical, but they will integrate these systems. They will understand the data flows. They will understand what the architecture looks like, and that will give them the opportunity to then, hey, like now we're monitoring energy. Now let's look at efficiency of our lines. Now let's look at maybe like different areas, different signals we can bring in. So I think it certainly is a very, I don't want to say easy gateway into
Hmm.
getting the data, but it is a pathway that is, as you said, subsidized. There's a lot of support. I know that there's a lot of groups that also work with SESME to help integrate that. So there's a lot of resources, not only technical, but also in terms of like people that can help do these kinds of deployments. So I think it's an excellent way to start experimenting and then find other ways to use that data besides, the starting point, which is in many instances energy. So I think that's a really good example. Dave, what are your thoughts?
Absolutely. No, I think this is great conversation. I do want to throw Zach's comment up here because Ira was talking about getting in trouble, and Zach said his ears were ringing. So here we are. Zach's talking about how it's not just about collecting the data, it's also advancing your infrastructure and training employees to become more digitally mature. That's a good phrase, Zach. There's lots of back end development that needs work. And I think it goes back to Ira's point of it's a cultural change. And I would agree. I think there's lots of, in theory, Fortune 500 companies that could invest the money. I think changing the culture of those companies is probably more difficult than changing the culture of those small to medium sized companies, right? For a fairly insignificant amount of money, right? So a couple or a few $100,000, some of these smaller to medium organizations can collect a bunch of data, can go make decisions on a bunch of this data, and can go ingrain that into the culture of their organization because they've got, I don't know, a couple hundred employees, and this is what the president says, and the president is walking down talking to the employees about the importance of this so that we can all keep our jobs and continue to do this. I think that's a lot, in theory it's a lot easier to go change the movement of smaller to medium sized groups that have a couple hundred employees than it is to go change the direction of Fortune 50 companies who, for me, most of the time when I go talk to those guys, Ira, it's, hey, we've done something different every 3 years. Go look up on the wall of all the failed posters of the previous things. Why should we even bother having this conversation? Is it going to make a difference? Because the last 20 of these haven't. I think on some of those larger organizations, it's much harder to change the direction that the company is going to go.
Yep, I I agree. But I do think philosophy is really driven by leadership, and whether you're
Hmm.
big or small, it all starts with belief. And if you can really push it and you really do believe it, really going back all the way to the beginning of our conversation, we were talking about
Yep.
sales and the credibility aspects and these kind of things. I, the size of the organization, I think, defines the time that it'll take to make the change. But I think in all instances, the change can happen. Maybe that's the hopium in me. I don't know, but I
Yep.
really do believe it is the case. There are shareholders that come into play too, but there is the culture plays a big piece. The vision.
Absolutely. I would agree with that. Ira, I want to make sure that we hit on one other major topic, tomorrow's trends. It's your new show.
Hmm.
Can you tell our listeners who, well, they're probably not familiar with it because, again, it's your new show. You've only got a couple of episodes out. Can you tell us a bit about it? Who should go listen to it? Kind of your hopes and goals of
Yep.
that, please.
Yeah, sure, absolutely. Thanks a lot. So I have a new show. It's a new podcast. You can find it LinkedIn, YouTube, and it's titled Tomorrow's Trends. And really, what it's about looking forward and looking at the future of technology and business in automation and manufacturing, looking at those trends that are happening. What is going on? But then not just looking at them 100% from a technical point of view, trying to break them down into more of a meaningful and understandable bites to figure out how they apply, if they apply. Not everything is unicorns and rainbows. Sometimes things need to be looked at in a little bit more depth. We
Mhm.
have experts on, and we go through some topics, and again, technical business topics, really break it down, and just have some discussions on how things are and where they're going and if they make sense. So I would encourage anybody that has an interest in looking at the what's coming down the pike, both the good and the bad of it, to tune in and check it out. Again, you can find it on LinkedIn, you can find it on YouTube, you can find it on Apple Podcasts and Spotify, those places, because it is a podcast. And Industry Sage is the media company that's hosting it, along with a couple of other great podcasts that have come out recently.
Awesome.
Absolutely. Yeah, Ira, thank you so much for that. If you guys are in chat or if you guys are listening on podcast form, we will have the links to all of those so you guys can check out tomorrow's trends. Vlad, we're running close on time. I want to ask you if you got one last question before we ask Ira the final questions.
One last difficult question, Ira,
Oh,
right?
oh.
So you've you've certainly been having a lot of
Maybe we should change this up where Vlad gets to ask one last difficult question to all of our guests before I ask the final question, just to see the look
good.
on their face. For all of our podcast listeners, Ira got that look on the face, like, oh no, Vlad's got a good
I was
question for
excited.
me.
I'm ready to go. Let's do it.
Good. Not only is it a difficult question, it's a two-part question, right? So let's set the
Oh,
premise
sorry, you're
there.
breaking up. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding.
So having a lot of conversations with, end users, OEMs, but also engineers working for those types of companies, maybe how can they, and I would say they as like number one end users, but also two engineers and maybe technical people in those roles can best prepare for I guess what is to come, but the changes that we've discussed, right? The AI or maybe the more data extraction opportunities. How can they best prepare either their organizations and or their people and or maybe themselves if that's the roles that they are in?
hmm Well, if I was them, I would listen to tomorrow's trends. No, I mean, no, sorry. Shameless plug, but maybe. Um, I think I am a firm believer in understanding by doing. Now, how much doing you do, that's really up to you. But you don't have to have a manufacturing facility to start looking at some of these technologies, to understanding how the way the data works or these kind of things. You can do it in your home. You can do it with some smaller devices. You can model out some things. Take a look at it, see what it's all about, and try to understand it. The better you can understand it, the better you can articulate what will and won't work. The better questions you can ask if you are, maybe listening to this type of podcast here, or engage in some other forms of communication. Invest in community. So community, I think, is really paramount with an idea like this, because there are no hard and fast rules. There are no perfect silver bullets or boxes that you can open up that can solve this exact problem. It is something that is evolving. And yes, there are guidelines, there's philosophies, there's theories, but getting involved in community, and there are several of them out there. The 4.0 solutions, for example, I think is a great community. They have a very specific way of thinking, which is good. It gives you some guide rails. You can choose to prescribe to all of their guide rails or choose the ones that you do like. But getting educated, becoming part of those communities, and getting involved in those kind of things can help you prepare for the things that you don't know, which is probably the biggest concern of anybody. Is what are the things that I don't know that I at least need to be able to ask about?
I really like that, right? And I think that the answer is how to say like specifically gray because obviously it depends on which industry you're in, maybe what your role is, how big of a company you work for or are I guess implementing for. And the answer is I guess the consultant answer is that always it depends. So you need to spend the time in understanding, what
Yeah.
suits you and
I mean,
yep, yep.
I mean, just to add on to it. So, what was it 5, 6 years ago? We launched a product at Phoenix Contact called PLC Next, and PLC Next was a new way to approach control. It's an open-based control system, provides your standard PLC control type of environment, IEC 61131, but then also provides you direct access to the Linux side of it, so you can do your own system integration directly on Linux. It also has IoT hooks, so you can do things like M2TT and OPC UA, and that was all wonderful. I didn't know anything about that, right? My team didn't know anything about that. So what did we do? We went and we investigated these things. We looked at the market. Yes, we knew technically what it was, but what did it mean to industry? And that's when we went out and we went down this road. And I'm not afraid to say that even in a public podcast like this. Like, look, I mean, this was a product that I think was great and is very relevant for the market and has very unique applications and can provide a unique application or be a unique tool for a lot of people's applications. But without the knowledge that we learned through a lot of communities and interactions, we don't get to where we are today, which it is a very successful platform for us and works in a lot of different kinds of applications. So it's just, and it was a slight twist on the question that you asked me, but it's a similar kind of thing where it's a little bit of a gray area, and we went and we tried to apply it.
Yeah, I really like that. Thank you so much, Ira. And
Absolutely.
I
I
go
love.
ahead.
I'm sorry. Go ahead, Vlad.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, I love that answer. I think going and doing the research and being part of communities is really important. I actually want to go take my predict the future question back towards the beginning of our conversation when we were talking about non-traditional engineering careers. Ira, do you imagine that more technical folks, more technical engineers are going to move into some of these sales and marketing roles? Do you think there's going to be a demand or a push to continue to have more and more technical people? What do you think that the future of engineering and technical roles is going to look like in the next, 5 years?
I think it can only increase. I mean, the number of people that are going to technical schools, the
Mhm,
amount of what tech means today is different than what tech meant before. I mean, you could be technical, but now you need to be technical in this area. Um,
mhm.
you need to really be able to double click and dive down deeper. The generic nature of things is not as desirable as it once was. It just provides you a way to learn and a way to get more specialized in a particular area. So yes, AI will, help replace certain things and change the way people do their systems and everything else. It's just a tool. It's just a tool, and you will need people to be able to apply those tools to make it very effective. Certain tools in my hand to do hand or wood carving or wood creations and these kind of things are going to be very different than someone that does it professionally. Trust me, it'll be very different. I'll try my best. It'll look very different. So
Very different. Thank you, Ira. I look forward to seeing the LinkedIn posts of your newest woodworking project. I think that'll be very good. But no, I think that's great. Going to some career advice. If someone is technical as to if they went to engineering school or if someone has spent some period of time in the field and is looking to make a change into one of those sales and or marketing roles, what's the best piece of career advice that you have for them?
um, I I think just reach out and look in the different. I would find companies that you want to work for. I think
Mhm,
environment and company and culture is really important. And then once you're there, what are the types of things that you can help them with? And sales is usually one of those things, particularly if you come with a unique skill set. So yes, you can go
mhm,
look up sales engineer. That's probably the most generic title,
mhm.
but it could come in other flavors. Business development. It could be I'm blanking on a couple others. It could be specialist.
Yep.
It could be industry expert,
Applications engineer, yeah.
application engineer, vertical markets, these kinds of things. So understanding what value you want to bring, it comes back to just the sales piece, even to yourself. Like, I want to work at X company. Okay, what value can I bring to that company? I don't know. Okay, well, I should probably figure that out before I go ask them for a job, right?
Mhm.
What value can I bring? And then let's try to work our way towards that.
Absolutely. I think that's great advice. And I want to kind of comment on your previous advice of lateral thinking. If you have a skill in one area, there are lots of companies who would be interested in that skill, even if they don't use the exact same words that you would to describe some of those skills, especially in the data side, especially in the data collection or data analytics side. I think that we will only see more and more of those opportunities into the future. Ira, I'd like to ask you for a book recommendation, please.
Yeah. So I have two book recommendations. How about that?
Oh,
So
okay.
one is, I think, the best productivity book that I know, and the other one is fun. So, the best productivity book that I know is The Subtle Art of Not Giving Enough. And you can finish the word F. And I don't know if you guys have heard that one before.
Mhm.
It's a standard productivity book. It looks at prioritizing things and then deprioritizing things, but it does in a
Mhm.
very harsh way, which
Mhm.
my tone, the way that I think, the way that I act, I like it. It connects with me, and I really enjoy that. I prescribe very much to the idea, the philosophy of David Allen's getting things done. While it doesn't follow directly that philosophy, I
Mhm.
apply it in that similar kind of way. If I can get it done quick, do it. Don't sweat the small stuff. Focus on the bigger picture stuff. I like that book. Take a look. I listen to all my books, by the way, so audiobook is good for that as well. The fun one, I'm doing it
Mhm.
for the second or third time now. I'm reading this one. Just really enjoy it because I'm a kid of the '80s and coming up through there. But Ready Player One is just such a great fun book to partake in. And if you haven't, it's worth it. It's fun. Maybe I'm a teenager at heart, living in a 40-plus-year-old body. Whatever. I enjoy the book.
I love that. Let me ask. I believe there's a follow-up, at least on audiobook form, that I saw. I think it's Ready Player 2. Have you
I
listened to the whole series, Ira?
I have not done that one yet. I haven't,
Okay.
and I'm
Okay.
going to, but I'm
Yes.
going through Ready Player One first. Well, for
And there's
like,
a movie, right? If I'm not mistaken.
yeah, the
Yes.
movie in standard fashion is just not the same. But
Gotcha.
there is a movie, and if you haven't done the book, I would encourage you to do the movie. But do the book. It's worth the time.
I watched the movie. I thought, well, you can never capture as much in a movie or a TV show as you can in a book because books are thousands of pages long. I thought the movie was interesting in and of its own right,
Right.
even if it doesn't necessarily one-to-one correlate. Vlad and I have had lots of debates as to television shows and movies and if we like them versus how well they fit with the book versus video games. But I thought it was interesting in and of its own right, even if it didn't hit all of the points of the book. So thank you for those, Ira. Last question for you today is: who should reach out? Who can help you? Who are you looking to connect with? Is Phoenix looking for employees? Are you looking for new listeners for the show? How can our listeners help you?
So, I mean, look, I've been involved in the automation community for some time now. I'd
Mhm.
love to connect with anybody else that likes to talk about industrial automation, IoT, Industry 4.0, AI, just because I enjoy doing it. And Vlad and Dave will both tell you about that. I've
Mhm.
had many conversations with them over the years. So I encourage you to reach out. Best place to reach to me is LinkedIn. Yes, of
Mhm.
course, I have a new podcast. I'd love everybody to listen to that. But honestly, just reach out. Let's have a conversation, see where it goes. I do have one ask. Okay. We've talked a lot about career advice. The one solid takeaway that I would have from this is if you are interested, we do have an opening at Phoenix Contact for a control system and IoT engineer out west in the
Okay.
southwest part of the region. So if you have interest in that, you can find it on the Phoenix Contact website. Or you can find the recruiter. Just reach out to me. I'd be happy to have a quick conversation with you, see if there's a connection, whatever else, get you directed in the right way. Again, LinkedIn is probably the best way to reach me. You can find me Ira Sharp, probably the only Ira Sharp you'll find, but Ira Sharp Jr. is my full name there on LinkedIn, and I look like this. So if you see that picture, that's me.
Ira, this has been awesome. Thank you so much. Happy that we were able to go ahead and get you on. I will say, if you guys enjoyed this episode, the Ira's first episode with us, I had to go look back, was episode 65. So it only took us 111 episodes to get you back on, which is actually par for the course for us in this show, Ira. But we'll have to get you back on within the next 2 years, at some point in the future. If you guys have enjoyed this, make sure you're connected with Ira. If you're watching on any of our formats, you guys should have Ira's information to go ahead and connect via LinkedIn. If you're listening on podcast form, it should also be a link to Ira's LinkedIn podcast form in the show notes, which Vlad does an amazing job doing it. So make sure you're following and connected with Ira. Make sure you're watching and following Manufacturing Hub and connected with Vlad and myself. If you guys have made it this far in podcast format, you're awesome. Please make sure to like, comment, subscribe, rate us 5 stars, all of those fantastic things. We should be back same time, same place, Wednesday afternoon next week. Until